doesn't feel supported by the cops. He doesn't, he's divorced. His life has not been so great, but he has Donnie. And Donnie is something to aim for. And, so he's like a bear with a sore paw that leads to all these great opportunities with the movie and the heist.
Well, hello. I'm Russ Milheim from The Direct. Thank you for talking to me today about the movie.
My pleasure.
Congratulations, number 2. You got this story going, a lot of heists happening. With this sequel, right, it definitely looks like Nick is Breaking Bad. Why does he make that choice?
Well, Nick is, I think, used to being the guy. He has a killer instinct, He's very good at taking down the bad guys, and he's good at winning. He only really knows that. And I think at the end of the last movie, he thought, I'm screwed, and that guy's good. So it kind of washed him out, broke him up, but it also brought him back to life in a way. And I think that he doesn't feel supported by the cops. He doesn't, he's divorced. His life has not been so great, but he has Donnie. And Donnie is something to aim for. And, so he's like a bear with a sore paw that leads to all these great opportunities with the movie and the heist.
How did that, that big shift affect your own experience filming the sequel compared to the first one?
Well, I think it made it a lot more, like I think the ante on this movie in every way has been kind of turned up a notch and definitely more fun. Like if you see the cop, it's got that kind of subversive buddy cop chemistry. Mm-hmm. And the fact that this guy, Nick, who you were behind and you saw him as a very good cop, is now like, dude, I'm sick of my stuff. I'm sick of this. I want to join with you. And then what does that bring in? It brings so many ideas of like who these two people are as they get to know each other, the trust level, what the hell's going to happen between them, and getting to know each other. There's kind of like this innate brotherhood that they have. So there's so many colors, and I found that great to play, especially the humor. There's a lot. It's very funny, this movie, and it doesn't belie the intensity of the intensity and the grittiness. But yeah, it's well-rounded. I'd say well-rounded.
You've done a lot of action movies. So how did you utilize that expertise, right? How did this new movie challenge that in new ways?
In new ways, well, let me put it like this. What I love about how we make Den of Thieves, Christian writes a big script. He puts a lot in there. And then we film as much and as quickly as we can. So it's often, even though it's a big film, we had a much bigger scope, but it's still guerrilla filmmaking. We're still moving fast, so you're in it. And that's the kind of action that I love, because it's very visceral, it's very real, and it makes everything much more thrilling. Because you're feeling through, you're in it. We were hot as hell. We were climbing. We were exhausted, overheating, and hurting. And to be honest, that's the best action when you're really going through it.
Yeah. We talked earlier about, exotic locations, really fun places to visit. And this movie has a lot of great locations in it. What was it like filming there?
I mean, there's other locations in the movie, but for me, I was in the Canary Islands, and that gives you everything. There's so many kind of cultural and historical influences there. So it was amazing what we got out of there. The landscapes were just astonishing and really helped create a very unique atmosphere and mood for this movie that kind of stays gritty and very visceral and grounded, but it's also kind of beautiful. A lot of beautiful locations, and I think it's very breathtaking. So, yeah.
On this sequel, what would you say is the most unique moment you had on it throughout the whole process compared to everything else you've done? This could be like on set, afterwards, when it was all done, before it even started.
This was before we started, and Christian and I were working on the script, and he came to Scotland, and we spent 6 or 7 days, and we drove to different castles and cool hotels, and we hiked, and we talked in the car, and we thought up ideas, and we made it go deeper, and we kind of went into that, the relationship between Donnie and Nick, and that was so much fun, because he's brilliant. I've worked with Christian a lot now, so we have a shorthand, but just that was a great moment. Yeah.
Well, so how involved were you in the story of this movie? It seems like you did a lot with him.
No, I did. Yeah, but definitely the main story was all Christian. He already had a fascination with the Panthers and the idea of blending our Den of Thieves with the Panthers. Like, what if Donnie then hooked up with these guys? Because they're an amazing crew of people. And they're very mysterious and they're very brilliant. So, yeah, from that, he had the bones and the details. But what I was trying to bring was logic, because I was a lawyer, right? So I'm good with logic. Going, yeah, we've got to be careful with that, maybe too much of this. And then also more personality between me and Donnie, that you could go deep and really get lost. Because there's so much to get out of that relationship. That by the time you finish this movie, I really feel like you've been on an epic journey. And always, from start to finish, but especially with these two guys, you just love what they go through together, and you never know. It's just constantly pulling the rug from underneath you as to where they're at.
Now, I have more questions about Den of Thieves, but I want to take a moment to ask you a brief unrelated question.
Okay.
We just saw a glimpse of your character in How to Train Your Dragon.
Yes.
And fans are excited. So, to help feed those fans, what can you tease about, how that movie turned out, and maybe what some of the biggest differences are with the live-action iteration compared to the animated?
Okay, so I just saw a rough cut. So there really weren't maybe 20% special effects done, and I get goosebumps when I think about it. It was so amazing and so powerful, and then you see parts of it where they are closer to being done, and your jaw just drops. And the best way for me to describe it is I made 3 of those movies over many years, and I always wondered, I loved the animated movies, but I always wondered, God, what if this was real? What if we were really there, real people, real dragons, and we had a chance to do that, to make it real. And I think that is one of the main differences. When a dragon breathing fire over a bunch of actual Viking men and women running, it feels a lot more scary than when it was animated. You have a little more, you can distance yourself. But this feels much more involved and kind of just immersive. I'm so excited to see how it is when it's finished, because I think every second is going to be precious.
Well, I'm Russ Milheim from The Direct. Thank you for talking to me today about the movie. Congratulations, number 2.
Yes, sir.
So we're getting there. We're going to be the next big franchise, right? Now, Den of Thieves 2 is a very different beast from the first. And in your own words, can you describe how it's evolved from that first movie?
Well, it's set in Europe, so it becomes sort of a mixture between American and European cinema. And Donnie finds himself sort of embroiled with what's called the Panther Mafia, who are based out of Serbia. And then Nick is, he's sort of bent out of shape after Den 1 as to the fact that this guy beat him in his mind. So he pursues him to Europe. So the film really is sort of almost our attempt at sort of a European old school kind of, French New Wave kind of vibe film. What's something that you really wanted to achieve in this sequel that you just didn't achieve in the first one, or just didn't even do in the first one? It's really a buddy movie. It's really sort of a love story between Nick and Donnie. These 2 Americans find themselves in sort of a strange place, overseas, and Nick obviously then, is going to switch sides for the film. So it's about that dynamic between a cop and a criminal, sort of exploring that, how they're more similar than one would think. And that line between cop and criminal is almost at times invisible. It's almost like crime's almost like it's a symbiotic relationship, right? The cop and criminal, they only exist, one exists without the other, right? So it's really a buddy movie between the 2 of them. How many? Because their chemistry and that relationship is kind of the core of the movie. How drastically did that change throughout the process? Like, what was the evolution of that? Did you have it maybe at points where they were just like more angry towards each other, or they got along easier, or what was that balance like? First of all, in terms of the performance, we put them in Den 1. We kept them separate, apart from each other. The 2 groups, like the criminal group and the cop group, were they only hung out with one another. They never, because we wanted to keep up that sort of rivalry between the 2 groups. And this one, we did the opposite. We made sure that Donnie and Nick, Jerry and O'Shea, basically lived next door to each other. They were neighbors for the whole time, so they really sort of developed that camaraderie between each other naturally, off screen. And then on screen it pays dividends, right? So you feel that kind of, at first there's obviously great distrust, and it's all about sort of, that the evolution of that relationship, to see them sort of actually kind of, learn to love each other.
we briefly mentioned there is a new team in this, the Panthers, right? Can you talk about developing that crew and those new personalities and how they kind of blend in with everyone else in the movie?
All those characters are based on actual people that I met and know and hung out with in the Balkans and in Europe. And it's a very culturally specific, closed-off world. So in reality, to get to know them was fascinating, and it was just about casting the right people to sort of capture that energy that they have, and then bringing Donnie into that environment was interesting because he's an outsider, but he becomes one of them, and because he's so good at what he does, he gets the okay to join their group, and obviously he proves himself worthy by the heist he pulls off in the beginning. But that was a really fascinating process.
What would you say was the biggest challenge that crafting this movie presented compared to the original?
To get that camaraderie and that chemistry between Donnie and Nick, right? Because in the first one they were so adversarial, and to see that was really crucial to the film. Their performance and how they got along and how that whole energy, how that dance worked on screen, and they killed it. Their performances are amazing, and that's really the heart of the movie.
Yeah. The heist itself in this movie, I was wondering, how do you come up with the specificity? I can't even say it. Look at me tripping over my own words. Yeah. To do just the details, right, to the heist. How do you come up with that? How do you decide, okay, this is what the heist is going to be, and this is how it all works?
So, very methodically. I initially went to Antwerp, Belgium, where a heist took place in 2003, often referred to as the flawless heist. And I met with a guy named Commander Patrick Pays, a guy named Agim de Broeker, who were the heads of the Diamond Police, part of the Belgian federal police that investigated that heist. And they also investigated a heist in Brussels, the Brussels International Airport in 2012. Those two heists were the basis of our heist in the film. And I basically worked with them I went actually to the locations of the heists. They gave me all the investigative details, and they showed me everything. So we were very, very heavily detail-oriented. And everything that you see in the film is a very accurate representation of actually how they went down. So it was a very labor-intensive, took a long time to really get all those details correct.